There is a moment, right before someone falls in love, where they try to stop it. You may have seen that moment already. You may have lived inside it without even knowing what you were watching. It looks like distance. It looks like silence. It looks like someone pulling back exactly when things start to feel real. And if you have ever been confused by someone who seemed close one moment and unreachable the next, you already know how disorienting that feeling is. But that is not indifference. That is a war. Somewhere inside them, one part is reaching toward you, and another part is fighting to stay in control. Both of these things can be true at the same time, and that is exactly what makes it so hard to read. You are not imagining the contradiction. The contradiction is real, because the person living it is genuinely torn. Carl Jung spent much of his life studying what happens when a person feels something they are not ready to admit. He believed the feelings we resist do not disappear. They do not fade quietly into nothing. Instead, they sink beneath the surface and continue operating from there, shaping behavior in ways the person cannot always explain, even to themselves. What looks like confusion from the outside is often, underneath, a very consistent pattern. It just isn't a pattern the person is fully aware they're following. That's what we're going to walk through today. 13 signs that someone is fighting feelings for you they have not yet let themselves fully admit. Some of these will feel obvious the moment you hear them. Others are quieter, easier to miss, and far more revealing once you understand what's really happening underneath. And the 7th one on this list is the one almost everyone gets wrong. Because it doesn't look like love at all. It looks like the opposite of love. It looks like irritation. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you may find yourself understanding someone in your life with a clarity you didn't have an hour ago. Before we get into the list itself, it helps to understand why this pattern exists at all, because it isn't random, and it isn't cruelty. Most people who fight their own feelings this way were not born guarded. They became guarded. Somewhere earlier in life, wanting something too openly led to disappointment, or being fully seen led to being fully hurt. So a kind of quiet rule formed, often without the person ever consciously choosing it. Stay careful. Stay in control. Never let anyone see exactly how much you want them, because wanting is where the danger lives. That rule can protect a person for years. It can even look, from the outside, like strength, composure, independence, someone who never seems rattled by anyone. But underneath composure like that, there is often a very different reality. A person working hard every single day to manage feelings that refuse to stay managed. And when someone like that meets a connection they cannot easily control, the old rule starts to strain against something new. That strain is what you have likely been sensing, not absence of feeling. The sound of an old rule breaking down in real time. With that in mind, let's begin with the first sign. Sign 1. They remember things they pretend not to care about. A small detail. A comment you made in passing, weeks ago, that you assumed had long since been forgotten. And then, out of nowhere, in a completely different conversation, they bring it up. Casually. Almost too casually, as if it meant nothing at all. But nothing forgettable survives that long in a person's memory. Memory is selective. It keeps what matters and quietly discards what doesn't. So, if a detail about you stayed, if it resurfaced weeks or months later without effort, it stayed because something about it mattered enough to hold on to. And if they're pretending it didn't, that pretending is doing work. It's work aimed at keeping you at a safe emotional distance. Work aimed at keeping themselves from admitting how closely they've actually been paying attention. Sign 2. Their eyes stay a second too long. You have felt this before, even if you couldn't name it at the time. A glance that lasts just slightly longer than an ordinary glance should. Not dramatic, not obvious enough to point to. Just long enough that you noticed it, and then immediately wondered if you'd imagined the whole thing. You didn't imagine it. Eye contact is one of the few places where the nervous system tells the truth before the conscious mind has time to edit it. Words can be managed. Tone can be controlled. But the eyes are slower to obey the parts of us that want to stay guarded. In that half second before someone looks away, you are often seeing something closer to the truth than anything they will say to you out loud. Sign 3. They show up in ways they don't have to. Not grand gestures. Small ones. Checking in for no obvious reason. Remembering something you mentioned you needed. Being present in a moment that didn't require anything from them at all. People rarely spend real effort on someone they feel nothing for. Effort costs something. Time, attention, energy that could easily go elsewhere. And for a guarded person especially, effort becomes one of the most honest languages they have left, because words feel too risky, too exposing, too much like handing someone the exact truth they're trying to protect. Now, if all three of these were happening on their own, you probably wouldn't be as confused as you are right now. You would already know. What makes this so disorienting, what keeps you replaying moments late at night, trying to make sense of it, is what comes next. Because right after the closeness, something else tends to show up. And it can feel like a complete reversal. Sign 4. They pull away right after a moment of closeness. This is the one that hurts the most, and for many people, it's also the clearest sign of everything we're talking about today. A good conversation, a real moment, something that felt even briefly like genuine connection, and then quiet, distance, almost as though it never happened at all. Psychologically, this is rarely retreat from you. It's retreat from what you made them feel. Closeness that feels good can still register, somewhere underneath, as dangerous, especially to someone who learned early in life that wanting something deeply is how you end up getting hurt. The nervous system doesn't always distinguish between good intensity and bad intensity. It just registers intensity, and for some people, intensity itself triggers the instinct to step back. Sign 5. They ask questions they already know the answer to. About your day, about your plans, about people in your life. Questions that seem casual on the surface, but keep circling back to the same territory again and again, as if there's something they're quietly trying to confirm. This is testing, not curiosity in the ordinary sense. Part of them is checking, again and again, where they actually stand with you, without ever having to say out loud that standing somewhere matters to them. It's a way of gathering information about you while withholding information about themselves, a very common pattern in people who feel more than they're willing to admit. Sign 6. Their mood shifts around your availability. You cancel plans, and something changes in their energy, even if they insist out loud that it's completely fine. You mention someone else, someone new, and the air in the conversation gets just slightly thinner. Small things, easy to explain away individually, but consistent, over time, in a way that starts to form a pattern. Jung wrote that what we resist internally often ends up controlling us from underneath, quietly directing behavior we would never consciously choose if we could see it clearly. A person who refuses to admit they're affected by you will still be affected by you regardless. It simply comes out sideways, in mood, in tone, in the timing of their replies, instead of coming out in honest words. If you've been nodding along to any of the last 3 signs, you already understand something important about how this works. Guarded love does not announce itself. It leaks out sideways, through inconsistency, through small, unexplained shifts in energy, because the direct route, simply saying how they feel, is the one route that feels too exposed to take. This is why so many people in this situation describe the same confusing sensation. Closeness one day, cold air the next. Not because the feeling changed, but because the fear got louder than the feeling, just for a while. Now here is where it gets interesting, because sign 7 doesn't resemble any of the signs we've covered so far. Sign 7 looks like the exact opposite of love. Sign 7. They get irritated with you, for no clear reason. A short response where a longer one would have made sense. An edge in their voice that wasn't there last week. A small comment that landed sharper than the moment actually called for. This confuses people more than almost anything else on this entire list, because it feels like proof. Proof that nothing is really there. Proof that you were wrong to sense a connection at all. But irritation is rarely a sign of indifference. Indifference is flat. Indifference has no charge to it, no edge, nothing worth reacting to. Irritation, on the other hand, takes energy. And that energy has to come from somewhere. Often, it comes from this. You make them feel something they did not plan to feel, and some quiet part of them resents that. Not you, specifically, the feeling itself, the loss of control that comes with it. The uncomfortable fact that you got in, emotionally, when almost no one else has managed to in a very long time. That resentment is not the end of the story. More often, it's a sign that the story hasn't finished writing itself yet, and they haven't decided how it's going to go. Sign 8. They talk about the future in ways that quietly include you, not commitments, not promises, just small references, a plan mentioned in passing that somehow already has you woven into it. A when instead of an if. A sentence that assumes a future together without ever announcing that assumption out loud. People rarely place someone into an imagined future by accident. Some part of them, even unconsciously, has already started building toward that future, long before their conscious mind has caught up to what they're doing. Sign 9. They open up in small, careful pieces, not the whole story, never all at once. A detail here, a piece of their past there, offered slowly, almost like they're testing the ground beneath their feet before committing to the next step. This is what emotional trust looks like in someone who does not trust easily. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself as a grand confession. It looks more like a door being opened one careful inch at a time, with someone watching closely to see whether it's safe to open it any further. Sign 10. They notice when you change. A new haircut. A different tone in your voice on a hard day. A quietness in you that you didn't think anyone else had picked up on. And somehow they catch it, even when you said nothing about it at all. That level of attention doesn't happen by accident. It takes a kind of focus that most people simply don't extend to someone who doesn't matter to them. Attention, real attention, is one of the most underrated forms of love, because it can't be faked convincingly for very long. By now, you may already be picturing someone specific. That's the entire point of a list like this one, not to describe a stranger, but to hold up a mirror to something you've already been sensing, quietly, for a while now. And the final 3 signs on this list are the quietest of all. They are also, in many ways, the most reliable. Sign 11. They get quieter, not louder, the more they feel. Most people assume big feelings create big, obvious behavior. Dramatic gestures, constant contact, unmistakable pursuit. For guarded people, the pattern often runs in the opposite direction entirely. The deeper it goes, the more careful they become, because now there is something real at stake, something worth protecting, and protecting it means slowing down rather than speeding up. Sign 12. They compare other people to you, even without meaning to. A passing comment. You're not like most people I've met. It's different with you. Somehow, small, almost accidental admissions that slip out before they've had a chance to filter them, the kind of things said in an unguarded moment and then quietly moved past. Sign 13. They stay, even when leaving would be easier. This is the quietest sign on the entire list, and it may also be the most reliable one. Distance is easy. Disappearing is easy. Walking away costs almost nothing. Staying, even in a guarded, inconsistent, complicated way, costs something real. And people very rarely spend something real on a connection that means nothing to them. If several of these felt familiar as you were listening, I want to say something honest. Something this kind of video doesn't always say clearly enough. None of this means they will act on what they feel. Recognizing a pattern in someone does not obligate them to change it, and it certainly does not obligate you to wait indefinitely for them to. Understanding someone's inner conflict is not the same thing as needing to carry that conflict for them. What Carl Jung understood, more clearly than almost anyone who came after him, is that people change only when the cost of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of changing. You cannot manufacture that shift for someone else, no matter how much patience or understanding you offer. You can only decide, clearly and honestly, what you are willing to keep giving while you wait to find out whether they will meet you there. That is not coldness, that is self-respect. And real connection, the kind that actually lasts, has never once required you to disappear in order to keep it. If anything, it asks the opposite, that you stay fully yourself, even in the uncertainty, even while the other person is still finding their way toward the truth they already feel. Because here is the quiet paradox underneath everything we've talked about today. The very qualities that make someone worth loving, steadiness, warmth, patience, the willingness to stay open instead of shutting down, are the same qualities that get lost the moment you start abandoning yourself to hold on to someone else. So whatever you take from this today, take that first. Stay honest. Stay open. But stay rooted in your own worth, regardless of how long it takes the other person to catch up to what they already feel. There's one more thing worth saying before we close, because it's easy to walk away from a list like this and start using it as a scorecard, counting signs, tallying evidence, trying to prove a case to yourself one way or the other. That isn't really what this was for. People are not equations, and love, especially guarded love, rarely announces itself in a way that can be checked off cleanly against a list. What these 13 signs are actually pointing to is something simpler than proof. They're pointing to attention. The quality of attention someone gives you when they think you're not measuring it. You already know, somewhere underneath the overthinking, whether that attention has been there. You've probably known for a while. What you've been missing isn't the evidence. It's permission to trust what you've already noticed, instead of talking yourself out of it every time the distance shows back up. And maybe that's the real value in understanding a pattern like this one. Not that it tells you exactly what someone else is going to do. It won't. No list can promise that, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you certainty they don't actually have. What it can do is take away some of the confusion. It can turn a chaotic, hurtful pattern into something legible, something with a shape and a reason behind it, instead of something that just feels like being randomly pushed away for no reason at all. Carl Jung spent a great deal of his career trying to understand why people sabotage the very things they want most. His conclusion, again and again, was that we are rarely fighting against another person. We are fighting against an old version of ourselves, a version that learned, a long time ago, that wanting something out loud was not safe. Healing that old wound is not your responsibility to complete for someone else, no matter how much you care about them. It was never meant to be. But recognizing it clearly, without losing yourself in it, might be one of the most generous things you can offer another person. And it is certainly one of the most protective things you can offer yourself. So if this described someone in your life, hold on to what you now understand, but hold it loosely. Stay open to where it goes. Stay honest about what you need. And whatever happens next, let it happen on the strength of your own worth, not on the uncertainty of someone else's timeline. If this helped you see someone in your life a little more clearly, or maybe even helped you understand yourself a little more clearly, that's exactly what this was made for.